Welcome to the Horti-Culturalists, and today we're going to do yet another interesting how-to thing with plants.
Yes, and we're doing a bit of gorilla in the mist because above us you can see the most extraordinary blue hydrangea. We are not in Stephen's garden, we're elsewhere in the area, and that just leapt out at us. I started to ask Stephen some questions.
Yeah.
My grandmother saying, is it true that you would sprinkle rusty nails underneath the hydrangea to change the colour? Stephen then just vomited forth with all this information, and so we decided to make this episode.
Yes, obviously if you needed to know, other people need to know.
Absolutely, and Macedon
is famed for its blue hydrangeas. Nobody up here needs to do anything to get that look. All they do is plant them in the garden and away they go.
Yes.
And in fact, I won
Yes.
Best International Exhibit at the Delhi Flower Show in India.
Now, there is so much for me to get my head around. Firstly, Delhi, how are you exhibiting flowers grown in Macedon in India?
Yes. Yeah,
How?
well, we had great big boxes filled with plastic liners. We picked masses of hydrangeas from our old family nursery years back.
Yes.
And my dad had contacts with Air India and some other things that were going on. So the secretary of the Delhi Flower Show was also part of Air India, part of their sort of tourism side of the company.
This sounded like an international conspiracy.
It was an international conspiracy. Anyhow, this guy said to Dad, why don't you send some flowers to our flower show? We'll fly them for nothing over to India. And somewhere I've still got the cup.
And you won Best in Show.
Or Best International Exhibit in Show.
That
because,
is extraordinary.
in Delhi they would never see hydrangeas. I mean, it's not a climate where they would grow well.
So climate is something we should get to. But we are going to meander down the path because there is the offspring of this that the garden owner took cuttings a couple of years ago. So there was a version of that plant that's easier for us to go and have a look at.
All right, so we can get the close-ups and then we'll discuss bluing and otherwise.
Oh, and the whole concept of Delhi. So on we go, Mr. Ryan.
Let's go.
Mr. Ryan, here we have the blue hydrangea in more detail. So is it true? My grandmother always used to say if you wanted to change the colour of a hydrangea, sprinkle old rusty iron nails around its roots. Is that true?
In a sense, yes.
Yes.
Because the iron from the nails will in fact help blue hydrangeas. It's acidic and it will help blue them.
Right.
And it is sulphate of iron that is the major element that creates blue hydrangeas,
right.
But the soil needs to be acidic to do it. The problems with using rusty nails, or I also heard those old Brillo pads, the trouble with those things is they work very slowly.
Yeah.
And of course there's always the chance of tetanus. So
charming.
Yeah, so one has to keep that in mind. I'm assuming your grandmother didn't die of tetanus, at least I hope she didn't.
No, she didn't, God bless her.
Yeah.
But let's talk colour change, because it is a thing you can do, which is quite extraordinary.
Well, I'll start off by saying that if you're really serious about it and you'd like to get some good distinct colour changes in your hydrangeas, you'll do so much better by growing them in pots where you've got control.
So, first question is then, clearly, and I've seen them as such, hydrangeas do very well in pots.
Yeah.
On patios, verandas, terraces,
somewhere that's not
balconies.
too hot and sunny, good sized pots so that there's room for the root system.
Yeah.
Keep them well watered during the summer months.
Yeah.
And then you can really take charge of the colours that the hydrangeas are going to be turned. And you can have a blue one right next to a pink one because they're not in the same soil. So you can in fact have that sort of diversity of colours. Having said that, of course, Mount Macedon grows the most beautiful blue hydrangeas without trying. What do they want up here?
I don't know.
A pink one.
Oh, a pink one. I'm still just processing your prize-winning entry to the Delhi flower competition. Whatever.
Yeah.
Extraordinary. Anyway, talk me through then the whole colour change thing. So firstly, if you've changed a hydrangea colour from blue to pink, you can't change it back, can you?
Yes, you can. Because all you've done is you've changed the alkalinity or acidity of your soil.
Yes.
Alkaline will produce pinks, acidity produces blues.
Right.
And so all you have to do is reverse the whole scheme. So you can go back again.
And so I see what you mean. That is much easier to achieve in a pot because you control the soil and the environment.
Yeah.
I get you.
Yeah.
But if you were in the garden, what would you be putting around the soil to change, to increase the alkalinity?
Yeah, all right. Well, it's actually quite simple. You just need garden lime.
Garden lime.
Yeah, so lime is an alkaline and it will in fact turn your hydrangeas to shades of pink. But you must remember that if you've got a rich blue like this, it will turn into a rich pink. If you've got a very pale blue,
Yes.
it will turn into a very pale pink.
Ah, so the depth of colour won't change?
No.
Just so if it's dark, it stays dark, light, I
Yeah.
see.
And if you've got a white one,
Oh, are you going to complicate things even more?
yep.
Yes.
You can bank on it. White ones don't change colour. They will stay white immaterial whether the soil is alkaline or acid.
So it doesn't matter how many Brillo pads you put underneath it.
Yeah, it will stay white. The little tiny beady flower in the middle may change colour,
Yeah.
but the basic form of the flower will stay white. And just to complicate things even more,
Yeah.
once hydrangeas get through summer, once the cool weather sets in, they tend to start getting their autumnal colours in the flower heads, which are different again. And rich dark coloured hydrangeas tend to go in shades of bronze and burgundy and copper and deep greens. Whites and pale shaded ones tend to go limey, and so you get that sort of acidy look about them. And that's not the plant changing colour permanently, because it'll go back to its white or its pink or its blue next year.
Oh my goodness.
So-
I'm just staggering under the weight of the complexity of hydrangeas. But let's go and look at this one up here. This is a cutting from the other one that we just saw. And let's talk about propagation.
Yes, why not?
Come on, Ferny dog. We have a helper, Mr. Ryan.
We certainly do.
Okay, you've got to sit down, Fern. We're talking hydrangeas. Now, Mr. Ryan, this one is easier for us to look at. So if you're propagating, and I hear they're very easy, talk us through propagation
All
of
right.
the hydrangeas.
Now, with your classical hydrangeas, the hydrangea macrophyllars, the large-leafed common garden hydrangeas,
Yeah.
you generally use the material that you've pruned off in the winter. So you do them as winter cuttings.
Which is quite effective. So you're, using waste to create more
Well,
plants.
exactly. You'd only put it through the shredder otherwise. What you do is you select a piece of wood behind where there is a flower, go back at least one set of leaves, maybe two,
Yeah.
and then again you cut below and above a node where the leaves were.
Yeah.
If there's any leaves still left on, strip those off. Make sure you put your cutting in the right way up,
Oh.
because when it's just a piece of wood that looks like a pencil, it's very easy to put your cuttings in
Right.
upside down.
So is it unusual to take winter cuttings?
No, not really. It's one of the classical techniques that are used when you've got plants that are deciduous
Yeah.
and are generally easy to propagate. Winter cuttings can be easily done, and they're the best sort of cuttings for people who haven't got any sort of facilities. So you can whack them in a polystyrene box
Yeah.
in some good potting mix or some garden compost and stick them into I suppose an area where they get some shade, where it's not too sunny,
Yeah.
and where you can make sure they get a bit of a drink if it gets a bit dry in the middle of winter, which doesn't happen often. So
No.
it's really easy, and those cuttings will strike by spring.
Yeah.
I would then pop them on into smaller pots, grow them
Yeah.
on in pots to start with, and then plant them out the following winter. So you put them out in the ground 12 months later.
Okay. Where is the hydrangea from? What's its natural habitat?
Well, the macrophylla hydrangeas, which are the common garden ones,
Yeah.
they come from
Let's not
Japan.
say common garden, but anyway.
No, I didn't mean common or garden,
Right.
just the commoner garden varieties.
Yes, yes, yes.
Their natural habitat is in the damp forests of Japan and China.
yeah.
So the vast majority of hydrangeas come back from that part of the world.
Yeah.
And this particular one is an old cultivar that was discovered of Hydrangea macrophylla, and it lurks around in all the old gardens, and it's called Sir Joseph Banks.
Ah, after our friend,
Yes.
the
yeah.
great botanist.
Yes, exactly.
So in terms of conditions then, if it's a native of China and Japan, it is fairly tolerant of the cold.
Yeah, to a large extent. I mean, you don't want to put hydrangeas into a really seriously cold climate where they might actually have frost burn down into the stems. So really cold areas, hydrangeas are a little bit more problematic.
But here you get light frosts and they obviously are fine.
Laugh at it. So
But water, they
love water.
so this is the problem in Australia. So they love water, not full sun.
No, give them filtered light.
Yep.
Maybe a little bit of early morning sun's fine.
Yep.
But don't put them out where they're going to get the hot sun from midday onwards.
Yep.
And also make sure that they've got good mulching around them to
Yep.
keep their roots cool,
Yep.
and adequate summer watering. And the hydrangea can still have lots of water around it, but if we get a really hot day, they will often flag and wilt. But as long as you cool them down reasonably quickly in the evening, and I normally go around and squirt the bushes with water,
Yeah.
and that will cool them down.
Yeah.
If their root systems are still damp, they'll recuperate overnight and be fine.
There you go. So my grandmother was kind of right.
She
about
was right, yeah.
The rusty nails and the colour change.
Yeah.
How interesting. I've got to get off my knees now. This is hurting too much. Mr. Ryan, who knew hydrangeas were so complicated?
It is, well, it could almost be a life study, just
It
learning about
could.
them.
And I think my tiny mind is just exploding with all of these varieties of colour change, back, forth, light, dark, not whites.
Not whites, no.
Autumnal change.
Yes, and the autumnal change. So it is sort of a complex thing in a sense, but it's what makes hydrangeas so interesting to people, because there's very few groups of plants where you can have such control over, in fact, what you end up with.
True. Well, that's a whole nother question, isn't it? But this one just literally leaps out of the forest because it is so blue. It's extraordinary.
Wonderful.
Thank you for watching this episode. We post every week, so if you want to see what we're doing next week, do hit subscribe, do hit like,
Yes, that
should
would
you
be
so
good.
desire. Ask Mr. Ryan a question,
Yes, please do.
and we look forward to seeing you next week. Who knows
Somewhere
adventure-
else in the horticultural world we will be.
what adventures might lie. So until then, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Bye all.